welcome to another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. In this episode, I speak with Freedom Rain from the Stereo app. We discuss the history of the Black Panther Party in celebration of Black History Month. I hope you enjoy the podcast. It's a 5-part series, so please do check out all the different parts. And if you dig what I'm doing, picking up what I'm throwing down, please share with friends and on social media. Peace out.
Okay, fantastic. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Just, in the middle of this, relaunching this next in-person school period, but also trying to keep to what I wanted to do for the New Year's and like what's important to me. So just having that balance. What about you?
Doing pretty well. Just trying to stay busy, studying for a career change here, and my back just kind of went out, so I'm dealing with that a little bit, but it's getting better, I think.
All right. Props to you on your healing path.
Thanks, man. So yeah, we could do a little introduction, and then we can kind of just jump into it, I guess, if you want.
Let's go. Talking about the Black Panthers. As you know, I'm out here in Oakland, so I have, this is near and dear to my heart. And I think it's a great topic to talk about, not only in like the spirit of so-called Black History Month, but just as an American phenomenon and a civil rights movement and things as part of everything that an American should know. So super excited.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, and for those that don't already know me, my name's Dave. I do a podcast and another thing with Dave, and
And another
half the
thing.
and another thing. Half of the time I'm a funny imbecile, and the other half of the time I like to talk about serious stuff, and maybe teach something to somebody about something that they didn't already know. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on this by any means. I'm just fascinated by it, by like you said, from the civil rights standpoint, about freaking time, and then B, like the social phenomenon that could repeat at any moment should people wake up,
Right.
not get woke, but wake up.
Well, thank you. That terminology of the difference between being woke and what state is your brain in when you're literally just woke from a sleep. You're confused, you're bewildered.
Right.
Whereas when you're awake, it means you have the grasp of the situation and reasoning and all of your so yeah, I love that you said that. Shout out to King Roshi also, bro. What's up, bro? We talking about these Panthers out here.
What is happening, King Roshi? Thank you for dropping in. Yeah, so I just pulled up some basic stuff, online. So I don't know if you want me to read something, get us started, and then we can talk, or you want to, is there something you want to lead in with, or?
No, you can go ahead and hit the bullet points. I have this real cool. My friend last year bought me this really cool Black Panther graphic novel comic book. And man, the art in it is beautiful. And especially living in Oakland, it's just really cool to see some of the art depicting local areas. But it goes into the depth. So I'd love to hear just the basic stuff, and then we can get into the deeper insights we have.
Cool. All right, so here's just a little paragraph about, the founding. So in October of 1966 in Oakland, California, Huey Newton and Bobby Seale founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Not many people, and myself included, didn't know about that part, like the self-defense, right? It's often left out when the news talks about it. It's just, ooh, Black Panthers, right? Ooh.
Yeah.
The Panthers practiced militant self-defense of minority communities against the U.S. government and fought to establish revolutionary socialism through mass organizing and community-based programs. The party was one of the first organizations in the U.S. history to militantly struggle for ethnic minority and working class emancipation, a party whose agenda was the revolutionary establishment of a real economic, social, and political equality across gender and color lines.
Right.
Bam!
Right.
Right?
Well worked.
Like, I mean, it encapsulates everything. It encapsulates Occupy, BLM, you name it, the labor wars
The civil
of the
rights
30s,
movement. And
civil
what I
rights
really like
movement.
what I really like is when you're learning this history, which I think our American schools can do a better job of teaching. But even when we do learn about it, it's so important to know what's happened leading up to 1966 and what's currently happening, and really what's about to happen with the assassination of Dr. King looming. And so I think it's really important that you keep that in mind, because after the long, hot summer in 67, we see basically that this is part of a longer arc, because when Snick and Stokely Carmichael and these guys were starting to get more militant, because after the civil rights movement, where yes, you have won some litigation, other than that, we're seeing that because of, even in response to being nonviolent and meek and turning the other cheek, dozens upon dozens of nonviolent activists and coordinators and protesters are being murdered by racists and police. So you can kind of sense that Black people are kind of getting fed up and are feeling like it that being nonviolent isn't necessarily the way to go. And this is a 10-year arc from the 50s. And then we see it culminating when Dr. King is killed, who was like the bastion of peace and getting along. We see that Blacks in America have almost very little choice at that point, and the revolution then becomes to look more militant and more about self-defense, because the courts and the police aren't protecting people. So I think that that's so important to realize the moral arc of what led up to the mentality of the Panthers, and I think it's really important.
Absolutely. Like the one thing that I did know before there's this amazing documentary which I'm going to reference, the
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard for the Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it on YouTube, and I'm going to mention this 20 times because people need to see this. It's amazing. I had no
Mm-hmm.
idea of the whole story, right? I thought it was more just a rebellious thing. I didn't know that they started with a children's breakfast program because kids
Mm-hmm.
were going to
Mm-hmm.
school hungry, and you can't learn if you're hungry, right? So
Right.
you got to talk about grassroots, man. They were taking care of their
Absolutely.
own community doing that, and the government didn't like that. And then they started policing police. I learned this from an ex-Black
Mm-hmm.
Panther up here
Mm-hmm.
in Sonoma County. I'm not going to mention any names, but I after a music show one night, I got to talking with him, and my father grew up in Oakland, in East
Mm-hmm.
Oakland, and
Hey.
um, and it's sad because my mom had to move out of there when the crack epidemic hit. She got broken into three times, and the last time she
Mm.
came home, the person was still in her house, and she's a frail little old lady.
She said,
Um,
"Time to go."
well, she didn't even
Don't
want to
mean
go.
to make light of it. So,
My
yeah,
dad made
yeah,
her. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but no, sad, and we can get into that later. But that
Mm-hmm.
was created to further oppress the Black community. Not
Sure.
only the drug war, but crack itself. You know,
Mm-hmm.
thank
Mm-hmm.
you, George Bush for that one.
W.
Um,
HW.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, Big Daddy Bush, right?
Big Daddy. Um.
Oh, but
Yeah, you're
but what I
absolutely right
learned
about that. Mm-hmm. Go
Yeah, but
ahead.
what I learned from this guy is that the Panthers were out there with police scanners policing the police because there was
Mm-hmm.
an epidemic of people getting murdered when they got pulled over by the cops. So the Black Panthers
Absolutely.
would show up and take pictures, old school, before video and shit, and
Mm-hmm.
armed to the teeth. So if it went down, they could, outgun the cop.
Yeah, and I think what's also important about that is in policing the police, it's so incredible how vocal and disciplined they were at knowing the law. First of all, this isn't a bunch of yahoos grabbing guns and being straight
No,
rebellious. Like you said, that they studied the law and said, this is the distance we need to keep in order for them to have nothing to say. This is our right. This is what we can and can't do. And just really setting out in a really strategic uh, way. And then we know about their 10-point program or their 10-point platform, that listed their demands. And I think this is something else we can take in line with today's current protests, or what we saw in 2020, is coming out with something that defines who you are as an organization, and kind of what a member looks like, and also what are the demands slash goals of the program are so important, because we saw in 2020 with BLM. Sure, BLM is a organization founded by certain people, but when you're at a BLM protest, anybody who essentially shows up with the BLM sign, or not even that, can be considered BLM, and or can have the entire movement be held responsible for what they do, in case you want to
That's
go
it.
out and start a riot or something, or burn down a Wendy's. It's automatically so I think that that's so important, that we look at what they did. Is those are some frameworks of a movement, like you said, grassroots, that should be present if you're going to be
Right.
successful.
I've got their 10 steps right here, but 10-point program right here. But I just wanted to, on top of what you just said, I wanted to say, uh, um, a lot of these, the sad part is a lot of these movements, once a movement gets, a movement of and for the people gets to a certain size, it
Oh
gets
yeah.
infiltrated by
Oh
the
man.
FBI or whoever. And like we saw up in Seattle, right? There were all these
Mm-hmm.
undercover cops breaking windows, all
Oh
professional
yeah.
style, not
Mm-hmm.
with Molotovs or anything, but just with a pop of an elbow, like they've done it a million times in practice, right?
Right.
Um, and they were all dressed the same in khaki pants, boots, and derby jackets and hats, right? Like,
Right.
wait a minute.
Standard
Uh,
shoes, just like standard issue shoes. Like, wait a minute, what's going
yeah,
on?
exactly. And then we saw that in the BLM too. That one dude popping windows in that place to try to set up BLM to look bad, right?
Right.
So.
Yeah,
Um,
great point.
But yeah, here's the Black Panther 10-point program written October 15th, 1966. We want freedom. We want power to determine the destiny of our Black community. We believe that the Black people will not be free until we will be able to determine our destiny. Two, we want full employment of our people. We want we believe the federal government is responsible and obligated to give every man employment or a guaranteed income. We believe that if the white American businessman will not give full employment, then the means of production should be taken from the businessman and placed in the community so that the people of the community can organize and employ all of its people and give a
Mm.
high standard of living. Basic standards of socialism right there. Basic tenets of socialism right there. Oh my God. I didn't know any of this. This was amazing. Number three, we want an end to the robbery by the capitalists of our Black community. I just learned about Black Wall Street this year too, so or last year. So boom, that's what that's referencing, part of it at least. We believe that this racist government has robbed us, and now we are demanding the overdue debt of 40 acres and 2 mules. 40 acres, 2 mules were promised 100 years ago as restitution for slave labor and mass murder of Black people. We will accept the payment of currency, which will be distributed to our many communities. The Germans are now aiding the Jews in Israel for the genocide of the Jewish people. The Germans murdered 6 million Jews. The American racist has taken part in the slaughter of over 50 million Black people. Therefore, we feel that this is a modest demand that we make. Um, Boom. Number four, we want decent housing fit for the shelter of human beings. Imagine that. We believe that if the white landlords will not give decent housing to our Black community, then the housing and the land should be made into cooperatives so that the community and government aid can build and make decent housing for its people. Boom. And this is
Mm-hmm.
before the red and I got to give a little background here that I learned when I studied real estate. This is before redlining laws were passed. So this is when this speech was written. It was still legal for mortgage people to not give a Black family a loan in a certain neighborhood, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it's a way of keeping people in a certain place without saying that, right? So you just can't get the
Yeah.
loan unless you ask for it in the right neighborhood. Um, real estate
Exactly.
agents real estate
And
agents just wouldn't show you the house. They wouldn't give
mm-hmm.
a title, right? Every step of the way, you'd be screwed.
Right.
And that only passed in like 1974 or something, 74 or 77. But Recent.
Right. And the crazy thing about that is like when you talk about Brown versus the Board of Education, we're talking about, even though segregation is done in a racial sense, just like you said about, housing properties, taxes, and all those things, is your school's money is determined by the local property taxes in that neighborhood. So if you've been redlined or you're into a ghetto or a poor community, even if you are at an unsegregated school, the chances are that it's still going to be separate and not equal to these private schools or these other schools in rich neighborhoods. So you're still dealing with a second-rate education, and it is still kind of segregation. You know what I mean? So yeah, you're
Right.
absolutely right about that.
Yeah, that's a way to underfund, an underhanded way to underfund the schools on,
Mm-hmm.
to further
This
oppress the community, right?
those same undesirables, right? Mm-hmm.
Brutal. Number 5, we want education for our people that exposes the true nature of this decadent American society. We want education that teaches us our true history and our role in the present day society. We believe that an education system that will give our people a knowledge of self, um, well, we believe in an education system that will give our people a knowledge of self. If a man does not have knowledge of himself and his position in society and the world, then he has little chance to relate to anything else. Wow, that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty deep.
Here, let's alternate. I'll read number 6 and then you do number 7. I
Oh,
want to
cool.
practice my voice. All right.
Sweet.
We want all black men to be exempt from military service. We believe that black people should not be forced to fight in a military service to defend a racist government that does not protect us. We will not fight or kill other people of the colored world who, like black people, are being victimized by the same white racist government of America. We will protect ourselves from the force and violence of the racist police and the racist military by whatever means necessary.
Nice, dude. Read the next one.
Okay. We
Number
want an
7.
immediate we want an immediate end to police brutality and the murder of black people. We believe we can end police brutality in our black community by organizing black self-defense groups that are dedicated to defending our black community from racist police oppression and brutality. The Second Amendment of the Constitution of the United States gives us the rights to bear arms. We therefore believe that all black people should arm themselves for self-defense. That, you know
Yeah.
what, those last two, not the last two, but 7 specifically, it's so crazy because I get some people's frustration with the media's portrayal of Black Lives Matter. And I know that when you compare it to, organized movements like this, it does seem kind of infantile, but let's just see how long in this 10 points program that this was laid out as far as police brutality and the murder of black people. We see that this is something that the black community has been literally ready to go to arms about. I mean, it's been a problem for hundreds of years, and we see in the 60s this was already
Yeah.
demand number 7. So I get it that people reacted in a way I wouldn't have in some of these protests and slash riots. But man, I don't know how else these people have been asking for this for many years. It's kind of crazy to see it here
Yeah.
as a demand in the 1966 manifesto. That's crazy. Go
Yep.
ahead. He
And
get.
you know what Martin Luther King said? He said, although he did not advocate violence, he said a riot is the voice of the voiceless.
Right. Right.
So there you go.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. You can hit us with number 8.
Let me see if somebody wants to join us real quick here. Number. Oh, no. All right. Mr. Real Talk, jump on up if you want. Number 8, we want freedom for all black men held in federal, state, county, and city prisons and jails. We believe that all black people should be released from the many jails and prisons because they have not received a fair and impartial trial.
Wow. Why Real Talk come in right when we read number 8 from the 10-point program as a cop? I wonder what he thinks of that. That's hilarious. All right. Number 9. We want all black people when brought to trial. Oh, wait, I lost my voice. We want all black people when brought to trial to be tried by a jury of their peers or people from their Black communities, as defined by the Constitution of the United States. The descriptions under these get quite lengthy after this. Jesus. But I'll read on.
Oh my God,
We
they do,
believe
huh?
that the
Woo.
courts, yeah, number 10 is really long. We believe we believe that the courts should follow the United States Constitution so that Black people receive fair trials. The 14th Amendment of the United States of the Constitution gives a man the right to be tried by his peers. A peer is a person from a similar economic, social, religious, geographical, environmental, historical, or racial background. To do this, the court will be forced to select a jury from the Black community. You know what? In some of these cases, when you see that the jury out of 10 is maybe 2 people of color and the rest are white, I think in some of these cases they're talking about when the population of that area is 50% or higher of Blacks, that it should definitely be more representation of Black people on a jury. I think that's an argument that's still made today.
Oh, totally.
To do
I
this,
mean, that was like the
yeah,
Rodney
good.
King trial was all about that, right? They moved it to
Yeah,
like an uppity white suburb.
right. Real talk. What did you think about number 8 on the Panthers 10-point program? Let us know if you heard that. All right, go ahead. You can hit us with number 10. Bro, technology is so bad. I just took my index finger on this page of this Black Panther book I'm reading, and I just tried to swipe up. I'm done. I just tried to scroll on the page. I'm on punishment. Go ahead. You can read.
We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, and peace. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. Ooh. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's huge. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is in the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And in no institute or government laying its foundation upon such principles and organization in its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Whew.
Dang,
This
they knew where
is
to
like
go.
this is like legalese, man. This is so well written.
Yeah,
It's unbelievable. Prudence
right.
indeed will dictate that governments long established shall not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But then a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursing invariably the same object, evince, man, this is rough, evinces
Man.
a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Boom. Okay.
Now, when we look at the
Whew, thank God
concept
that was the
of,
end.
yeah, when we look
Oh
at
my God.
yeah, brevity wasn't it. When we look at the concept of Black people being a nation within a nation and being treated as such by, apparently, the saying, there's 2 Americas, where, especially in that time, policing, courts, justice, and civil treatment of people was completely different. And this is upon the realization of them coming back from World War II and then Vietnam, to return to no dignity and no respect when they've been fighting globally. So I think all of that just pours into the sentiment that was at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this was like you know, all this craziness. So they were formed in 66. Then what? Martin Luther was killed in what, 67?
68.
68. So
Mm-hmm.
that's right. 67 is like the summer of love, and then 68 it all starts falling apart, and 69
Well,
it totally
67 is
goes
that
to
long
hell.
hot summer, which was all those, the Watts riots and everything that kicked off. So I think that's important for people to realize, because I understand when some Black people are saying, you know what, we've already tried the nonviolent, peaceful things that didn't work, blah, blah, blah. But to be fair, the 60s were full of amazingly coordinated, strategic, nonviolent displays and demonstrations. But during those same years, there were also huge riots, like the riots in Watts, the riots in Compton and other places. So it's not fair to say, oh, we should be done talking about peaceful strategies, because open rebellion has been tried in some pockets too. So I think we just need to notice that it's always been a little of both,
Yep. And we can't forget like the murder of those students at Kent State University in 68, right? Peaceful
That's right.
protesters.
That's right.
That's kind of like similar to, in today's world, a reporter getting shot by a rubber bullet in a BLM processor, right?
Right.
Like a
Yeah. Or
seven
a Dakota pipeline.
reporter. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I thought was interesting that I wanted to say real quick is the Black Panthers was one of the fourth kind of more militant responses of self-defense, so it's definitely not, in response to some of these people being killed, these civil rights people being killed. They had the Deacons of Defense, which when I read about them, well, I just thought that was dope as hell, which is a bunch of deacons at Black churches who are just strapped and take care of their own. And this was about 3 years before the Panthers. And there was
Oh,
other
wow.
groups formed by SNCC, like the Lowndes County Freedom Organization, which is a precursor. They're some of the first people to start using the panther as their mascot or their emblem. And so Deacons with Defense, just by their names, and these other groups of Black citizens organizing mainly against the KKK suppression of voting rights back then. They would intimidate or threaten you to not to come out. So Deacons with
Yep.
Defense and these other groups came out to protect their people. So you're right that a lot of organizations these days may seem like we're asking for you to do this or our membership this, but this is a group that came with free breakfast, protecting your grandma when she's crossing the street. They escorted Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X, and were her security when she was feeling unsafe when she came to San Francisco to speak. So this is a group that we constantly see showing radical love to their own people in a time where they weren't getting that love from the rest of the nation. So that's what I think is really unique about them.
Yep. And then to just give a little chronology to it, I got this
Mm-hmm.
report here. So then in 67, police arrest Huey Newton for the killing of an Oakland cop, and
John
more by
Fry.
all means, it
Mm-hmm.
looks like it was probably self-defense. Who knows? We'll never know. But anyway, then in 68 in West Oakland, Bobby Hutton is
Mm-hmm.
17, is shot dead by Oakland police in a 90-minute gun battle.
Mm-hmm.
An unarmed Bobby Hutton is shot 10 times, dead after his house is set ablaze, and he is forced to run out of the fire and bullets. Oh my God.
Surrendering. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Just 2
And
days earlier, Martin Luther King is assassinated after he
mm,
had begun rethinking his own doctrines of nonviolence and started to build ties with radical unions.
mm-hmm.
2 months later, on the day of Bobby's death, Robert Kennedy, widely recognized in the minority community as one of the only politicians in the U.S. sympathetic to the civil rights movement, is also assassinated. Wow, I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
it all happened that close together.
Bro, the 60s were
Wow.
absolutely crazy. And the thing is sure, we're still waiting for the government to disclose the official files of the JFK assassination, but it has been long rumored, and it doesn't even matter. The 60s are full of admitted documented cases of the CIA and FBI doing very unsavory things. And we don't have to go off topic because we can talk about that just as it relates to the Panthers. The amount of treachery, lies, betrayal, instigating wars, the ambush style raids, the no knock raids where they just come in blasting These are, extermination campaigns. This is what the our government was doing in the 60s, and not to say that they just, haven't gotten smarter ways to do it, but what do you think about that? Do you think there was something that justified the government's batshit crazy approach to things, or do you think that it's still as shitty? Like, what do you make of the CIA and the FBI going to the links that it did in the 60s and 70s?
Me, or are you asking the listeners?
Both. Definitely love to hear your thoughts, and then people in the audience, please chime in on that. And we got one in the chamber, so let's go.
Yeah,
Shout out to everybody in the room.
I personally, shout out to everybody. We got Tira, we got Real Talk, J. Rue, King Rashi, Paul, Alexis. Thank you, everybody. Exactly. My personal thoughts are that it was a coordinated effort to quell a movement. In 1969, the drug war, Nixon's head aide admitted on his deathbed that the drug war was started to target blacks and hippies. So they dropped drugs in the suburbs and in the inner cities so they could start arresting these people. And then they made the zero tolerance, bullshit. So if you got a felony, you can't vote for the rest of your life, right? So that was a coordinated movement. And then, like we just learned, like I just learned, I knew all those people were assassinated, but I didn't think it happened that close together, man. That's just like, damn, that's insane.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Much appreciated. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. This is a 5-part series, so if you haven't checked out the other parts, do check them out. If you're digging what I'm doing, picking up what I'm throwing down, please do share the podcast with friends and on social media. Thank you very much.